The first video that I actually do for my channel is not going to be on the VRT. It's actually going to be on the BMW R1150GS. I'm doing a rear end oil change and a gear oil change and looking at a couple other things. It's actually pretty hot today. It's like 85, whatnot. Got plenty of spare time because of all this coronavirus nonsense. So we're just going to be doing this today. First things first, whenever you do oil changes or any kind of, if you're changing a fluid in a vehicle, it's a smart idea to go take it out on a drive first. Just to kind of warm everything up, get the fluids moving, get all the sediments and the buildup to kind of float around, and hopefully it'll free it up for the most part and float down to the bottom, so you get a lot of that changed out with your fluid changes. It doesn't hurt. So we're going to start out with a little bit of a drive. Yeah. I'm actually starting this channel primarily with this thing right over here. It's a 2003 Volkswagen Jetta with the 2.8 liter VR6. There's a lot of stories and a lot of good stuff to come with this. This is going to be an interesting build. This is the whole reason I did this, but we have 4 other motorcycles and a bunch of other cars, so I figured, I could toss some extra videos in here for all you simple mechanics trying to get started in the working on stuff game. But yeah, we're going to start off with this test drive. We can get started on this fluid change. You never realize how useful these things are until you have a bike that has one, and then you realize how useful this thing is. So yeah, we're going to start here, the fluid change. It's fairly simple. Allen key, looks like you can even touch, feel how warm your rear end is. Just from looking on so far, I have an Allen key for the fill plug here, and then it's just a socket for the drain plug. Looks like probably a 17 millimeter. I'm gonna get a rag, a handy dandy rag, to help wipe off some of the dirt so I don't get any dirt debris into the rear end just by rubbing it off on accident or what have you. Drain pan, something to put the fluid into. Starting off, this is actually a really easy job. Fluid changes are the easiest thing to do, and they're preventative maintenance, so if you forget to do them, they can be one of the most costly things. It's really easy. I mean, just look up your fluid type. Typically with a lot of vehicles, like Germans especially, they have specific fluids that they like to use. So for this BMW R1150, this is what I got from the previous owner. It is 7590. It's liquid moly. I mean, this stuff works. It's the rear end oil. You need 7590 for your weight. It's important to get proper lubrication, and also with the change in temperatures, you don't want it getting too thin, and you don't want it to overheat. There's also cooling capabilities with fluid that prevents gears from expanding too much and shearing. That's just an extreme scenario. Also, whenever you're doing your fluid changes, make sure that you use the proper fill and you follow the proper directions to fill it, because there's a bleeder up here. I think that's what this is. It's a bleeder just to bleed off extra pressure that does happen to build up in here, or if there's water that intrudes, what have you. You don't want to fill it from here because you don't want to fill it all the way up. Typically with gears, they're going to be partially submerged. So like rear ends for your F-150, it's not completely full in that case. It's just partially submerged, and then it slings it on and properly lubricates the whole system. So we're going to go ahead and start here. The good thing about these rear ends and stuff like that, and transmissions in some cases, is typically whenever they do have this fill hole here, it's at the specific set level. So you fill up to this, and whenever it starts to pool out of here just a little bit, that's your appropriate level. You want to make sure of that, because if in case they don't do that, you overfill it, you don't want anything bad happening. The other thing with fluids for like rear ends, it's a 19 millimeter socket, by the way, for the drain bolt on this. The other thing with fluid changes, especially with rear ends, there's a good chance they put something known as a friction modifier in there. I've heard for limited slips and like locking types that have a clutch mechanism to lock the rear axle. This is for cars too. You would want a friction modifier in there to change some of the slip characteristics of the fluid. Again, there's plenty of forums out there for all kinds of stuff that you want to make sure you do it the right way, because it can be very, very costly if you don't. Oh, it smells like gear oil. Good Lord, it smells nasty. While you're doing these, typically you want to do a little inspection. You can use a camera and go in there and look at your gears. It's important to do an inspection because while you have this fluid out, and the key thing is that your magnetic drain plug, you want to look to see if there's any kind of metal fragmentation. Typically with this black sludge that builds up, unless it's excessive, that's not exactly a bad thing. That's just like slight wear, and that's not really a big issue. But the biggest thing to look out for whenever you're doing this is actual metal fragments. That's the key thing. If you see like metal particles that show up, that can be telltale signs with engines of bearing wear, but that could just basically give you a sign of how your motor's acting.
My GoPro battery died.
It's a good thing to just take your drain plug and wipe off some of that debris just to get a fresh start. I usually let mine drip for a little bit, just to let some of the excess come out. You don't have to, you can just wait for 10 minutes, even if there's still like a little steady drip coming out. I'm gonna go ahead and reinsert my drain plug. Easier said than done. There it is. Man, that took some force. But this is the fill plug. I'm going to go ahead and fill up. It should not take much at all to fill this one up. Occasionally look in there, make sure you're not filling it up properly. There we go, we're almost there. Add a little bit extra because it may not hurt. Like as long as there's fluid in there, you should be good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and reinsert my that should be good. That's the rear end oil change. There is no additives to my knowledge. Feel free to leave a comment, or if you have any questions,